लाइव चालू हो गया। सोनाली स्पीक, सोनाली को लाइव चालू हो गया। आज तो अनम्यूट सोनाली, अनम्यूट। He is there. So tell him to start. He is his first lecture.
Okay, when we are going to start?
Yes, sir. Please start. We're waiting for you.
No, so you will moderate that, no? Or should we? When you will say, I will start.
I think they're live, sir.
Sir, we have started live.
Yes.
Okay, so should I start?
Please.
Okay. Good morning, respected chief guest and all the distinguished people, particularly for this inaugural session. On behalf of Nehru Science Center and National Council of Science Museum, which is our parent organization and one of the largest network of science center in the country and probably in the world as well. I welcome you all to this symposium, international symposium, which is 16th on metal ions and in biology and medicine. In fact, it's a pleasure for us. I know most of the students who are connected with us, they are slightly on, you can say, from the school level or maybe junior college level, and they may not be directly part of this symposium. But the reason why we have joined this along with all our co-hosts like National Center for Science Communicators, Jamia University, Indian Academy of Oral Medicine and Radiology, Society for Cancer Research and Communication, and Maharashtra University of Health Sciences. So we have all come together to highlight this issue because particularly nowadays when we have so much of restrictions, so much of pollution all around us, and recently there were news also like people average life of a human being, it has been reduced because of pollution and COVID. And then there is another news that the pollution is affecting us a lot, particularly in big cities like Mumbai also, and Delhi, it is sometimes the situation is very bad. So this particular one on metal ions, they are considered as the most toxic pollutants as well. And with industries emitting so many things or so much of pollutants in our land, water or atmosphere, which basically constitute the biosphere in which we are living. So they are directly, we are interacting with these pollutants. And when they enter in our cells or biology, means biologically, then perhaps they create a lot of problems for us. So our residents, they will be definitely benefited with this, particularly when we'll have all those recordings and we'll put up on YouTube channel so that they can see later on as well. That's why we are all here. So I'll not take much time. I think we are going to listen not many papers from the experts. They will tell us what is going on this toxic pollutants all over the world and what we can do. How only thing is Science Center is doing. We normally create popularization and awareness on topics which are relevant to the society, and that's what we are going to do today. After 2 days, whatever will be there on website, perhaps we will keep watching, and they will become aware, and at least they will be requested to do their bit to reduce this, to mitigate the effects of all this. So with this, I welcoming you all once again to this 16th International Symposium on Metal Ions in Biology and Medicine. I hand over or invite Dr. Sonali Khanna to take it further. Thank you, ma'am.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to welcome you to the 16th International Symposium on Metal Ions in Biology and Medicine. We last met in the premises of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, Nagpur, in October 2019. And the topic was metal ions and organic pollutants in biology, medicine, and environment. This was a highly successful event, and after inauguration by the Honorable Vice President of India, we had threadbare discussions with all stakeholders and scientists. However, now we are meeting after 2 years in different circumstances. We, rather humanity, have faced the pandemic after a lapse of 100 years. It is worth recording that when COVID took shape of a pandemic, the medical fraternity had no vaccine to bank upon and no fixed and effective protocol for treatment. There was a worldwide shortage of some medicines which were believed to be helpful in this situation. And so, the governments across the world resorted to what came to be known as lockdown. Lockdown meant shutting down physical, economic, industrial, and educational activities and public transportation, thereby confining people to their homes. This situation was accepted by people all over the world. The lockdown continued for 4 months in the first instance, and it appeared to have succeeded in controlling the situation. But today, with much less caseload, even in advanced countries like Germany, Austria, and some parts of the United States of America, people are protesting against reinforcement of lockdown, and vaccination hesitancy is also prevailing. At the United Nations Conference COP26 at Glasgow, we heard world leaders talk about climate change and the adverse effect it's having in our lives. However, failure of COP26 and reluctance of masses all over the world in curbing economic activities is a serious challenge to the medical fraternity. So, uncertainties were faced all over the world, and lakhs have perished from this planet. The World Health Organization has already warned that Europe alone would see nearly 2 million deaths till March 2022. That is just in the next 4 months, if the situation is not controlled. Germany recently reported 50,000 cases in one day, despite 87% vaccination. Same is true of Austria and many other countries. So the fact remains that we must face the challenge next 20 years at least until environment measures which are increasingly being put in place by governments show some effect. Otherwise, everybody must wait for 2050, as the Russians call it, the most reasonable date of imposing curbs on coal use or fossil fuel use to reduce carbon emissions. So, in the current scenario, in the next 2 decades, when we all are to live, flourish, there is no let up in the crisis. We all stakeholders gathered here today are doing a lot of work in our respective fields to combat new challenges. But what is required is the will for fruitful collaboration to evolve multidisciplinary approaches to benefit humanity. It is an undisputed truth that human health is deeply linked to the surrounding environment. The aim is to create awareness about evil effects of environmental degradation and the fact that climate change is a public health crisis. And if we join the dots, the bottom line is that genes form the blueprint, but the environment ultimately influences disease causation. We have invited reputed clinicians, biotechnologists, environmental engineers, nuclear physicists, biochemists, climate change activists, public health data analysts, social scientists, policymakers, and young scientists who have to take the work forward in the coming decades. After all, ultimately, the objective of all research, government efforts, and concerted efforts is to safeguard human health. This symposium is designed to have plenary sessions on metal-based toxicology, cancer, imaging, therapeutics, health risk assessment, and metal ions in radiation response. Often, scientific meetings appear distant from action, and it is high time we realized that our research must result in benefiting even the poorest patient in remote areas. World Science Day on 10th November reminded us of our obligations to society. It clearly calls upon all the scientists of the world to spread the message of science far and wide to all the laymen, all youths in all countries, that science alone can lead the medical fraternity to have all protocols and methods of treatment in place so that things do not worsen. So we need to share knowledge, we need to share research, both nationally and internationally. Otherwise, near doom is predicted. And now it is being seen in various parts of the world. It is worth recalling that the Parliamentary Standing Committee of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for the last more than 5 years in India, in its various reports, especially the 107th and the 113th, had called for setting up of multidisciplinary research units to facilitate research and to help identify new ailments and facilitate formulation of new protocols for treatment. This was much before the onset of this pandemic. So it's on us to take forward these issues and work to guide young researchers. I want more women scientists to come forward as they know the nitty-gritties of households, the environment. They deal with infants who are most vulnerable, and they face prenatal and neonatal situations which are very relevant for survival. As a member of the Board of Research of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, I'm happy to inform that the university has decided to encourage multidisciplinary research. So once again, I welcome you all, particularly our patron, Dr. Jayaraman, our Vice Chancellor, Madam, Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Lieutenant General Dr. Madhuri Kanetkar. I'm Professor Najma Akhtar, Distinguished Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia Central University, New Delhi. Thank you once again for joining us, and I hope as time goes by and time zones change, more and more delegates join us and give us the benefit of their years of research experience and expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed further, I would like to express my gratitude to His Excellency, Honorable Governor of Maharashtra, for his encouragement and blessings for the International Metal Ion Symposium. He has also very kindly sent his message, and I would like you all to hear the same.
It gives me immense pleasure to know that Nehru Science Center, Mumbai, is organizing an international symposium on metal ions in biology and medicine. Nehru Science Center is rendering human service in the field of science, particularly in the interest of children and those who are interested in science and innovations. The innovation, I am told, is being organized with the association with National Center for Science Communicators, Jamia Millia Islamia University, Academy, and Society for Cancer Research and Communication at Maharashtra University of Science and Health. As a matter of fact, it seems to be somewhat strange that though it's a center for science, developing the science and encouraging the students and the young children in the field of science, medicines, etc. But it is run by, I am told, by the Central Ministry of Culture. So it can be a good mixture of culture and science. And I think through this convention, in this symposium, I hope our professors, our participants, they will definitely find a new way how the science can be correlated with the culture, because our Indian culture is not merely some conventions, some rituals, but our culture is full of scientific research. And every ritual, most of the rituals here in India are seem to be very scientific. Even as yoga and meditation, all these nowadays the science thinks that these are very important for human being, for keeping good health. So that's why I hope through this symposium, this conference, definitely we will be able to inculcate in our students the spirit of science as well as spiritualism and culture. My best wishes for this symposium.
I now request Dr. Jayaraman, an eminent nuclear scientist come engineer, who has served at Bhabha Atomic Research Center for 40 years, to please give us his insight. And after retirement, very interestingly, he was professor of the Environmental Engineering Institute at Singapore and Dean, Faculty, Technology Management. He is currently the chairman of National Center for Science Communicators.
Thank you, Professor Sonali, for inviting me to be here. And I represent the National Center for Science Communicators. We are a community of communicators. And our business is to spread the message of science. We have scientist communicators, we have science practitioners. We mix together so that we convey the message of science, so that our ultimate objective is to create a scientifically literate and numerate citizen. That's our ultimate objective, that's our mission. We also have a small submission, a subset of that. We look at not only scientific culture, but also on research culture. Today, when this international community is discussing and deliberating on the sensitive elevations of contemporary research in their areas, we have a business here because we would like to listen to the knowledge producers. All the knowledge producers are met here, but we are the distributors of knowledge. And we are now in a crisis. In the pandemic times, science has been suspect. There is a distrust in science. There is a mistrust in science. That is because we did not make responsible and responsive reporting. Just imagine what Nature wrote yesterday. The Omicron, the transmissibility and the virulence, virologists, vaccinologists, biologists, and all the epidemiologists have not spoken in one voice. So how do we rush to the public when this matter comes out? We have a model of science communication, a model of science communication in the research arena, which I would like to share with you. This has been developed by Professor Stephen Webster of the Imperial College London, a biologist. He says that the research culture should be communicated to the public by three principles: reticence, innocence, and absolute intimacy with the subject. Reticence, as soon as I publish, I want to put it out to the world. Now, between your publication and vetting the results and validating it or being falsified, we give no time. We rush to the press. Publish or perish. We are driven by the dynamics of publish and perish. But then we do not know the natural and probable consequences of action. So our business is, as science communicators, we practice intimacy with the subject. Innocence, whether there are any bias built into that. And we look for validation and falsification. And then with the reticence, with reluctance, we publish the data because the consequences could be very large. It is this subculture of research culture, communication of research culture, that is what brought us here. We at NCSE cross the road. We are an NC chicken. We cross the road because we know that knowledge is being produced here. We would like to absorb as much of it as is possible. And we will process the information and we will communicate it to the public in a responsible and a responsive manner. That's the small function of the atom, the large mega molecule, which we are doing over here. Thank you very much, Sonali, being part of this, and to give a small expression about the National Center for Science Communicators. Thank you, Umesh ji, for allowing me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now request Dr. Paul Chanu, a senior member of the International Scientific Committee and the Associate Dean and Presidential Distinguished Professor and Director, the Regional Center for Minority Affairs, National Institute of Health, Center for Environmental Health, College of Science, Engineering and Technology, Jackson, Mississippi, United States of America. He is also the chief editor of the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health for over a decade. Sir, can we please have an overview from you?
Thank you very much, Dr. Sonali. Distinguished members of the inaugural panel, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As a member of the International Organizing Committee, I am honored and delighted to extend a warm welcome to all participants of the 16th International Symposium on Metal Ions in Biology and Medicine, being held at the Nehru Science Center in Mumbai, India. The 16th International Symposium is built upon the overwhelming successes of the previous 15 conferences that were held in 12 different countries, including France, Greece, Canada, Spain, Germany, USA, Russia, Hungary, Portugal, United Kingdom, Uruguay, and India. I have been privileged to have the opportunity to participate in 10 of these 15 previous symposia that generated most enthusiasm, attracting over 250 participants in every meeting. I firmly believe that this international symposiums continues to provide an extraordinary opportunity to exchange and share knowledge on the latest advances in scientific research that would drive future directions for basic behavioral and clinical research and foster the translation of novel discoveries to improve public health. This conference series has grown to an intellectual nucleus for development in the field of biomedicine. Scientific research has demonstrated that metal ions are naturally occurring elements. Their multiple industrial, agricultural, medical, and technological applications have led to their widespread distribution in the environment and therefore raising concerns over their potential effects on human health and the environment. According to the US Environmental Protection Agency and the International Agency for Research on Cancer, metal ions such as arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, mercury, and nickel are considered systemic and carcinogenic compounds that are known to induce multiple organ toxicity, even at lower level of exposure. Other metals such as cobalt, copper, chromium, iron, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, and zinc are essential nutrients that are required for various biochemical and physiological functions. An inadequate supply of these macronutrients result in a variety of deficiency diseases or syndromes. Also, metal-based drugs such as cisplatin and oronorphins are widely used for the treatment of human cancers and of rheumatoid arthritis, respectively. In addition, metal-based nanomaterials are now in widespread use as imaging agents for the diagnosis and treatment of human disease. The 16th International Symposium brings together clinicians, biomedical, environmental health scientists, and engineers to explore how novel scientific discovery and innovation address metal ions toxicity and foster the development and implementation of best approaches to maximize their application in medicine. I am very pleased that this year the scope of this symposium has been extended to address the current state of science of metal ions in biology and medicine, as well as to highlight some of the major challenges associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to really extend my Appreciation to Dr. Sonali Khanna for providing a strong leadership in hosting this symposium for the third time in India. Special thanks are also extended to all members of the organizing committee, as well as to the sponsors whose contributions have made this symposium a success. I invite all of us and all participants to this symposium to really take advantage of this unique opportunity to enjoy the scientific programs and interact and meet with friends and colleagues. Again, best wishes for a productive and successful meeting, and I look forward to really interact with you and also hear about the good science being done to address this issue of metal ions in biology and medicine and the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for putting everything in the nutshell. I now request our chief guest for today to please address us. I'd like to, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, madam. So today we are lucky to have Lieutenant General Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, madam, with us. She is the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, a dynamic pediatric nephrologist, and she's also been the professor and head of pediatrics at AFMC Pune and also dean at her alma mater. She has over 22 years of teaching experience, and the best part is she's been very student friendly and has been extremely dynamic in extending her support to the younger faculty and students. For her distinguished service, General Kanitkar has been awarded the Ati Vishesh Seva Medal in 2018 and the Vishesh Seva Medal in 2014. Madam, please, can you address us? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sonali. Shri Subhrata Chaudhary, who's the director of the Nehru Science Center, Dr. A.P. Jairam, the chairman, National Center for Science, communicators. It's so nice to have communicators on board, because very rightly you said that how it's important it's to take the correct message. Professor Paul Chanhao and Dr. Sonali Khanna, who's taken a lot of interest in this organizing and taking this 16th International Symposium on Metal Ions in Biology and Medicine forward. And honestly, this has been a very new concept or a thought process for me. And I read through the thing. I think the need for discussing an interdisciplinary approach, the need for society to work together on solving problems in a collaborative method is so very important. As we realize that our basic problem is, till date, scientists, society and healthcare people have never worked on a common platform. And with the result, what is happening is we remain in silos. Healthcare people feel that they should, they're really overburdened with treating disease, and that was seen in COVID times. The scientists are restricted to their area of expertise in their laboratories and are not always in connect with what's happening at ground zero. And with the result, and the same thing is not always communicated in a good way to society. And there is no feedback system as to what are the problems of society. Is education and research aligned to that? Is it giving back on a PDSA as a QI initiative? I think that's the need today, that we have one leading to the other. And in that, I think this initiative is fantastic. However, I did discuss with the organizing and the dynamic Sonali that we can probably make it a little more worthwhile if we bring in themes into this. Because metal ions, I think, is a very, very huge platform on which we need to work. You have metals right from trace metals in health, to metals in disease, to metals in therapeutics, to the works. But have we really, and now with nanotechnology coming in, the same very metals can be used in a very different format. So I think identifying problems and people working on those fields, putting thematic tracks together, we would probably come out with better outcomes from such a collaboration. And there is no doubt that you need to have a multidisciplinary approach. In fact, as member of the Prime Minister's Scientific Technical Advisory Committee, this has been a key thing in developing what we call the city clusters for global excellence. And I'm very proud to say that under the Niti Aayog and under the Principal Scientific Advisor and part of that committee, we've started off with 6 such centers in the mega cities, where again, each institution of excellence is an excellence center, but 2 + 2 hardly make 4. So if we can align these together, I thought, and we all think that we can make 2 + 2 makes 22. So this is the aim of where we need to have, and the new education policy is going to permit us to cross these borders, to create, puncture holes into these so-called fortresses and make them porous, so that we have training which is directed, which is skill-based, which approach is there in aligning to the needs of society, and where innovators can again work along with basic healthcare people, the society, industrialists, all of them we can find under this umbrella ways to break away the usual barriers that we have in our mind. And I think this kind of a symposium which gets all of you together is a great initiative in this forum. As far as the Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, it's my honor that I've just taken over as the Vice Chancellor. And I have given as a vision document that what we need is to have an interpathy and interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach to healthcare needs. And in that, a case and example is, such a symposium like this should bring in our other pathies also. We know that homeopathy and Ayurveda have for years worked with metals, but have we really tapped the knowledge wealth into that? I think that is lacking because we've not brought the scientific rigor into that. So I think we could use such platforms to invite people from different faculties to actually come in and work. But we would need to then give, because otherwise it's an unending, too wide a horizon. So if we've given theme of COVID this time, or the theme is environmental pollution or global warming, let's have people specifically interested in these subjects come and brainstorm, have a few workshops, have more, so that we have clear, defined learning outcomes, sharing and problem solving at the core of this, or the foundation of arranging this. And I love the message given by our Honorable Governor about the Ministry of Culture taking this forward. This is again a subject very close to my heart. No science can grow without culture. I've always maintained, whether it was as Dean, faculty, and now as the Vice Chancellor, I feel the left brain needs to talk to the right brain. Our corpus callosum needs to be strengthened. It is only when that happens and the right and the left start talking. Our normal procedure, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand does. Instead of that, we are talking of the left brain, which is all logic, science, research, thesis, everything so scientific. And along with that is the left brain, and the right brain, which is religion, culture, society, history. These are what we need to connect with. It is only when we all scientists and thinkers work on this will we find our true ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese word which says that when we do something, if our profession, our occupation, our passion can be aligned to what the society needs, I think we'll find solutions. With that, I wish the organizers my best wishes for this symposium, and I do hope you'll take this forward with certain ideas that we have shared and develop this further. And I'm really happy that the science communicators will be able to take certain key messages that come out of this symposium right down to society. COVID has taught us that collaboration there is no escape from it. It is when all of us got together that in record time, not only were we till 2020, 20 beginning, we hadn't even heard of this is your corona virus or this COVID. And look at what we've had at the end of your 1.5 year. We knew everything about the virus. The world is collaborating on its genomic sequencing. When we are worried about Omicron, it is no more about just Botswana or Africa. The whole world gets impacted. So unless we talk together and work together and have this INSACOG-like databases where we can quickly access this information and put it together as to what is happening, we will not be able to find solutions. But because we all collaborated, the Indian government went into empowered groups which had every people right from, whether it was society, whether it was NGOs, the scientific community, the entire lab, whether it was the CSIRs, the PSA's office, the Niti Aayog, everyone came together, met with a clear focus on weekly basis. And I think today in India, we can be proud to say that for a population and a country this size, which had a really relatively low healthcare infrastructure, we've done amazingly well. Today, we can be proud of having our own vaccine, our own test kits, and our own capabilities of solving this problem. And not just for ourselves, we are there for the world, because Indian philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where the entire community, the world is one. And I think symposiums like this are required. My best wishes to you and have a great evening. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, madam. That was truly enlightening. I mean, you've covered everything what was in our minds and much more than that, and given us a sort of a vision to, work on. And that's certainly really a great start. Thank you so much. And I thank Nehru Science Center and all our collaborators for, putting this together. I now would like to request our distinguished Professor Jamia Millia Islamia Central University, Professor Najma Akhtar, to address the gathering. Professor Najma Akhtar, an internationally renowned educational administrator, has 4 decades of academic scholarship in educational leadership. She is known for spearheading International Educational Administrators course for senior officials when she was at NEPA, a gold medalist of Aligarh Muslim University. She is known for innovations in educational governance. And she's a pioneer in bringing fully funded long and short-term international programs with diverse funding to her university and to the country. Interestingly, gender equity has been part of most of her projects. We're waiting to hear you, madam, today. I think there's a technical problem where they're trying to log madam in. So till then, I would introduce Professor B.N. Pandey. He's been at the Baba Atomic Research Center, head Radiation Signaling and Cancer Biology Section, Radiation Biology and Health Sciences Division, and under the Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India. And he's had a lot of pioneering research in medical subjects as well. And sir, are you here? I can hear you. Yes, I think he's here. Yes. The network at BRC. Yes, you're an officer. I can understand BRC has a major network problem. Yeah.
I'm there. I joined.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be there. Thank you.
Yes. So I want you to take this up and also talk a little about your research experience.
Sure.
Professor Mohammad Faisal will also be there in the session. He'll summarize the session. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So, would you like to speak to me? Speak or Dr.
Yes,
Khanna?
sir. Yes, sir. You please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and very nice to see you online. And I'm sorry that maybe you may not be able to see me properly since the audience, this camera setting is like that. So this is whatever best I can try to appear in the camera. So basically, thank you very much, Dr. Khanna, for taking initiative to organize this very important conference. And last time we had this conference, and this Nagpur, and this is really I can see some of the distinguished speakers, Dr. Paul from there online, and also I can see many of the scientists and researchers, distinguished speakers from all over the world. So basically, maybe before I think the next speakers comes, maybe I can take 1 or 2 minutes to maybe since it is related to metal ions. So maybe some of the activity what we are doing related to metal that maybe I like to mention.
Yes, sir. Please take your time to give us an insight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, you know that we are working in Avatom Research Center where our laboratory is basically focusing on work related to radiation biology, radiation effects, and there we are trying to develop some of the new approaches where we can take to developing for some of the nanoparticles, which are basically iron oxide based nanoparticles for different radiation station and cancer therapy. Also, we are working some of the metals like thorium, which is one of the nuclear fuel material for power production, the effects in the different biological systems like cell culture, animals, etc. So these are the, and in addition to that, we are biology and even the radiation biology aspect, and all are related to either these different types of improvement of cancer therapy or looking for some importance of drug delivery, and also maybe we are trying to look for the aspect of looking for this different health effects related to some of the these metal ions like thorium, which is important in terms of nuclear material. So these are some of the our research activity, and maybe I'd like to hear from the other speakers, and I'm looking forward for the next session.
I think so. We can start. Dr. Philip Paldry, you can introduce him. Then the moment Najma Akhtar madam comes, we will just welcome her in. She's just logging in.
Do you hear me? Thank you. Will you use my video?
There's a slight echo, sir.
Yes, I have to.
Yeah, this is better.
Is it better now? Not exactly.
Yes. We'll correct it from here on. Sir, you have 2 cameras on. You can switch off one camera.
I am trying to do it.
Yeah, okay, do that. No problem. Please take your time. We are actually dot on time with the inaugural, so we have some time. Now, sir, can we check your sound? Yeah. Sir, so you can talk at the end of your presentation. We are starting your presentation.
Is it?
Yeah.
with Sonali Khanna and Vijay Vena, we would like to share with you
Are you using
our
my
opinion
my voice?
on the
Yes, I'm using your
underestimated
presentation, sir.
role
Don't talk right
of
now.
oxidative
Yeah? We'll
stress
take
in
you
cancer
in later.
treatment.
The presentation is on.
The oxidative status represents an equation between the production of free radicals, mainly reactive oxygen and nitrogen species, and the antioxidant system. This one is complex, and we just would like to emphasize on the role of selenoproteins, which have oxidoreductase functions, catalyze the reduction of disulfide bonds in proteins and peptides, providing reductive properties. We shall see later on why we insist on this point. A strict
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just 1 second. Madam has joined us. Good morning, madam. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yes.
I'm happy to be part of this program. Okay,
Thank you
please
so much.
continue.
Yeah.
Continue, Karan.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yeah. Madam, would you want to speak right now? And then we can continue with the scientific deliberations. That will be better.
Okay.
Anna, okay?
Okay.
Yes, because you are live. We have them
Okay.
recorded also. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So as you were not here, ma'am, I'll just introduce you again.
No, don't introduce.
Okay.
Chief patron of this program, Shri Subha Brata Chaudhary, Director, Nehru Science Center, Mumbai. Co-patron, Dr. Jayaraman, Chairman, National Center for Science Communicators. Symposium Chair, Dr. Sonali Khanna. All participants from India and abroad. I'm very happy to be here with you. I congratulate the Metal Iron team for organizing this international symposium. I should give a special mention to Dr. Sonali Khanna, whose hard work and untiring efforts are bearing fruits today. And the journey started in France, reached to Mumbai 2016, and then it is led by Dr. Sonali Khanna. This is the third time she's serving as conference chair after the last one held in Nagpur. This symposium focuses on metal ions in biology and medicine with emphasis on public health. Metal ions are fundamental elements and basic constituents of all life forms, including plants, animals, and humans. Metals serve as structure and catalytic players. No enzyme can be active unless there is a metal in it. RBC in blood will not carry oxygen to body parts if there is no iron in it. Mitochondria will not generate any energy, and chloroplast will not do photosynthesis if there is no iron-sulfur cluster in them. In fact, there has been no discovery of gravity by Newton if there was no metal iron in the tree, whose play role in fruit maturation and senescence. The nitrogen cycle would have been operating if there was no molybdenum and iron in the nodules of nitrogen fixing plants. And similarly, metal ions are playing extraordinary role in the field of applied sciences and medicines. Metal ions serve as nanocarriers for delivery of drug. I remember Dhatu Bhasm has been attached to many Ayurvedic preparations, including Swarn Bhasm, which has made medicines more effective. Today we know very well that mechanism behind this efficacy was formation of gold nanoparticles. Many Unani preparations contain silver foil, chandika work, and ultimately silver, which forms silver nanoparticles loaded with drug and helping in delivery of to each part of body. Many metal ions produce extensive support to surgical operations and other applications such as filling of tooth cavities. The most interesting and fascinating thing about metal ions is that they are center points of multidisciplinary research. Metal ions are indispensable for living organisms. However, the role of metal ions in human is complex and it still remains poorly understood. Imbalances in metal ion levels due to genetic or environmental sources are associated with a number of significant health issues. However, in clinical medicine, the role of metal ions in metal-based drugs is notable in three major areas: as metal-related diseases, as metal-based medicines, and as agents of metal-based toxicity. I would like to mention about the role of metal ions in cancer therapy. Platinum compounds, particularly cisplatin, are the heartbeat of the metal-based compounds in cancer therapy. Clinical use of platinum complexes as an adjuvant in cancer therapy is based on the desire to achieve tumor cell death. Thus, the metal ion offers multidimensional opportunities in advanced research and development of the nation. This field becomes further important because there are a number of environmental pollutants which are metal ions such as mercury, lead, copper, arsenic, nickel, cadmium, and many others. We need to carry out extensive research on how to control this metallic pollution and keep the environment clean and safe for all life forms. I must say that the youth of the nation have to come forward and play decisive role for two reasons. Because they are full of energy and they have a longer innate.
I know the shortest route. Which problem?
Also, they have to correct many things which their elders have failed in. My special invocation is to my girls, who should come forward and lead from front, especially in the medicine and health sector, which needs more dedication and caring because of their caring nature. I'm so happy to share with you that Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, and Finance Officer in my university, Jamia Islamia, are all women. A number of deans and heads are also women, who are making Jamia a place of learning every passing day. Jamia is a 101-year young central university. It is not yet old. It is of high output in research. This is evident by the national and world ranking data. Presently, NIRF has declared Jamia on the 6th ranked among the central universities of India. In the world ranking, RUR Jamia is on 438 rank. In Times Higher Education, UK, we are placed in the slot of 751 to 800. Very few Indian universities are in this level slot. In the past couple of years, Jamia has received President of India's award twice in research. 7 Prime Ministers' research fellowships have been awarded to Jamia students in the last 1 year. We have 1,28,000 Scopus-based citations with 129 H-index and publishing more than 1,000 papers annually. Faculty members in Jamia are almost from every state of the country and represent a religious, cultural and lingual diversity, and of which we are very proud of. Jamia is doing research in every frontier of modern science, including biotechnology, computer science, engineering, health sciences, management, languages, design sciences, gender equality, social work and extension activity. And just before this program, your program, I have just opened the first course of design, management in design. So design has also landed up in Jamia. Many teachers are doing research on metal ion research area with special focus on nutrition, environment cleanup, phytoremediation, health and dentistry products, and much more. With these words, I again congratulate the organizers for a wonderful theme of symposium. I also wish a grand success to this event. Jamia has this time taken active part in this program, particularly through our faculty, Professor Irfan Qureshi, and many other faculty members. I wish it a great success. Those who are physically attending the symposium, I wish a comfortable stay to them and hope this symposium will add value to the metal ion research and give an opportunity to the national and international researchers and scientists to share their findings and ideas. I thank you all. I thank you one and all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much for the words of wisdom and the enlightenment. It's always a pleasure to hear you, and you're so in theme. I'm really indebted. Thank you so much. I now request, I think, Dr. Philip Collery. He's one of our senior most members. So, sir, would you want to talk for a few minutes and then we put on your presentation, which is fine. Are you okay with the echo now?
Thank you, Sonali. I am very pleased to be with you, your eminent colleagues, and it's a very great pleasure to know what India is possible to do. It was a long time that we began the first symposium in 1990, and you are doing very big efforts to continue these events, international events. So thank you very much for your great efforts. I hope that we shall continue our cooperation in the future with you and your colleagues. And now, if you wish to, also my congratulations to Dr. Paul Chunwu, who was very often present at different symposia. So now, if you wish to, you can record my presentation. With Sonali Khanna and Vijay Vena, we would like to share with you our opinion on the underestimated role of oxidative stress in cancer treatment. The oxidative status represents an equation between the production of free radicals With Sonali Khanna and
Yeah, it's
Vijay,
fine.
we would like to share with you our opinion on the underestimated role of oxidative stress in cancer treatment. The oxidative status represents an equation between the production of free radicals, mainly reactive oxygen and nitrogen species, and the antioxidant system. This one is complex, and we just would like to emphasize on the role of selenoproteins, which have oxidoreductase functions, catalyze the reduction of disulfide bonds in proteins and peptides, providing reductive properties. We shall see later on why we insist on this point. A strict equilibrium is required to maintain the intracellular redox status in healthy cells. The redox potential or reduction potential reflects the concentration of the reduced and oxidized forms of redox couples. It is expressed in volts as it represents an energy for the fluxes of electrons. For example, the redox potential of cysteine or reduced glutathione on oxidized glutathione has been measured intracellularly and extracellularly. In cancer cells, there is usually an increased production of reactive oxygen and reactive nitrogen species, and a deficit, or in contrast, an excess of the antioxidant system, but that cannot counteract the excess production of reactive species. It is a pro-oxidative status. In the tumor cells, the oxidative status depends on many factors, among them the type of cancer, lung, breast, colon, and so on, its stage, involvement or not of lymph node, the presence or not of distant metastasis in organs, the concurrent treatments, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, and so on. There is a strong relationship between the histology of the tumors and the redox potential of the cancer cells. It is even possible, according to Cannon et al., to determine the histopathological diagnostic of breast cancers according to the redox potential of the cancer cells. The redox potential will not be the same whether the cancer cells express or not the estrogen and or progesterone receptors, have or not a surexpression of the HR2 receptors. In triple-negative breast cancers, it is mainly an increase of the reactive nitrogen species production which is observed. Concerning the involvement of lymph node, there is a great difference between patients with an involvement of the nodes with a higher ratio oxidized versus reduced glutathione. In tumor microenvironment, the redox potential also varies in the cells, and this is related with the inflammatory status and the inflammatory cells which are present in this microenvironment. In the host, it is especially a decrease of the antioxidant defense system which is observed, and it may be evaluated in part by the assay in plasma selenium and in selenoprotein concentrations. There is a dual effect well known of free radicals. In one end, an excess of antioxidants could be deleterious. because the production of free radicals is essential to eliminate damaged cells in a safe human organism and to allow an optimal function of the immune system. On the other hand, an excess of free radicals favors the development of cancer. They may induce oxidative cell damages in different cell components. The changes in DNA, proteins, lipids will act as cell messengers, and they will allow the transcription of genes implicated in the regulation of the cell growth, angiogenesis, invasion, inflammation, and metastatic process. The cancer treatments are not yet adapted to the parameters of oxidative status. They usually increase much more the pro-oxidative status of the cells until a level which will kill these cancer cells. As a consequence, side effects may be in part attributed to a decrease of the related antioxidant system. The objective of anti-cancer treatments could be to restore the equilibrium between the production of free radicals and the antioxidant defense system when it is disrupted. Antioxidants may be used as anti-cancer agents, but at the condition that they decrease the production of reactive species and not only increase the antioxidant system. Moreover, they must obviously be able to selectively inhibit the proliferation of the cancer cells. Our proposal is a combination of rhenium and selenium as a deselenide ligand. Rhenium with the two atoms of selenium. Rhenium is the metal with the greatest number of oxidation states, -3, -1, and from +1 to +7. Selenium is not a metal, but an element known to be either antioxidant or pro-oxidant, with different oxidation states, -2, +4, and +6. It is expected that the rhenium-selenium drug will act as a redox potential modulator thanks to these two components. In fact, we observed that the rhenium-selenium compound was able to significantly decrease the reactive oxygen production in breast malignant cells. Here is the proliferation of MDA triple-negative breast cancer cells, and here the normal cells. Under the influence of the rhenium treatment, there is a decrease of the production of ROS in cancer cells, but not significant in normal cells. Benassi et al. Showed that transforming growth factor beta-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, and vascular endothelial growth factor A were increased in patients with triple-negative breast cancers. It was published in 2015. These biomarkers of triple-negative breast cancer are correlated with the production of reactive species. Therefore, we assayed them in the medium of culture of malignant breast cancer cells treated or not by the rhenium-selenium compound. We had the pleasure to observe that the rhenium-selenium drug was really able to decrease, as expected, the VEGF levels very significantly, with a sharp decrease with the lowest dose and a second biphasic curve less pronounced. While in normal cells there is no effect. These normal cells have a lower effect of VEGF than the malignant cells. It is known that VEGF can be upregulated by oxidative stress. It was observed by Katsafli, who measured in 63 patients with primary lung cancer before any treatment and in 25 normal subjects the oxidative stress and the vascular endothelial growth factor. It was shown that oxidative stress and VEGF levels were significantly increased in patients with primary lung cancer. And there was a significant correlation between serum oxidative stress and serum VEGF levels, indicating the correlation between these markers. The rhenium-selenium drug also selectively decreased dramatically the TGF-beta1 levels in breast malignant cells versus normal cells. Again, the levels are very high in cancer cells, low in normal cells. There is a sharp decrease of the levels of TGF-beta1 at the lowest levels of rhenium-selenium, and then a plateau. Both TGF-beta and oxidative stress interplay, and both have possible anti-tumor or pro-tumor effects. TGF-beta can control the ROS production directly or by down-regulating antioxidative systems. Moreover, reactive oxygen species can influence TGF-beta signaling, increase its expression, as well as its activation from the latent form. Third marker, the insulin growth factor 1, the selenium drug, had the same effects than the previously markers with a sharp decrease, very significant and selectively. There is also a possible interaction between insulin growth factor 1 and antioxidants. The insulin growth factor 1 receptor is a receptor tyrosine kinase synthesized as a single-chain alpha-beta pro-receptor. In its active form, it consists now of two identical extracellular alpha-beta subunits and two identical beta subunits, all linked by disulfide bridges, according to Girnita et al. We would like to verify that the antioxidant rhenium-selenium drug may reduce disulfide bridges of the active form. Mitochondrial DNA mutations contribute to tumor progression by enhancing the metastatic potential of tumor cells. These mutations confer high metastatic potential with an overproduction of reactive oxygen species, as noted by Ishikawa in 2008. It was very important that they noted that the pre-treatment of the highly mutated metastatic tumor cells with reactive oxygen species scavengers suppressed their metastatic potential in mice. The binding of rhenium with DNA is commonly observed with rhenium tricarbonyl compounds, as reviewed by us in 2019. Moreover, we were able to demonstrate that the rhenium-selenium drug could form adducts with guanine basis of DNA. Here is the parent form, rhenium-selenium. Then the binding of the whole complex with one guanine base, then the selenium is displaced and only the rhenium is binding with one or two base guanine. It will be necessary to show in further experiments if the rhenium metal of the rhenium selenium drug will induce DNA edicts in the nucleus and or in mitochondria. Finally, the aim of the rhenium select drug is to kill cancer cells, and we observed this selective effect on the malignant cells by comparison with normal cells, with lethality very important and as soon as 25 micromole. In conclusion, while the usual anti-cancer treatments increase an excess of reactive oxygen species until a level which will kill the cancer cells, it seems possible to fight the cancer disease by antioxidant drugs, but the drug must be able to decrease the production of reactive species and not only to increase the antioxidant system. The role of oxidative status to manage anti-cancer drugs is still underestimated. Knowing that an excess of antioxidant may have a paradoxical pro-tumor effect, we propose that doses should avoid a decrease of the free radicals lower than normal levels, or there will be a decrease in the immune system, but should be effective enough to both decrease the overproduced free radicals and to inhibit the growth of the cancer cells. Further experiments may be proposed. The first one is concerning the role of the rhenium-selenium drug and the mitochondrial function. It is mainly suggested by the binding of rhenium to DNA and by the knowledge that the main site of production of reactive oxygen species is in mitochondria. This could be the main mechanism of action of this unique compound, and further experiments have to be realized. Second experiments concern the possible role of the rhenium-selenium drug to reduce disulfide bonds in oxidized proteins and transform them into reduced thiols. This needs to be explored, especially due to the well-known effects of selenoproteins. In experimental animal models, it could be verified that the doses should not be the maximal tolerated doses, but the optimal biological doses, normalizing the oxidative status. At this optimal dose, the drug has to inhibit the tumor growth, and if the proof of concept is achieved, further experiments will be performed to get the agreement to perform clinical trials, mainly on toxicology aspects. Thanks for your attention. Cooperations are welcome. Discussion is opened. Thank you very much.
Pandya, you can please introduce Dr. Khan, and he'll speak for 2-3 minutes. He's live with us, and then we'll play his presentation when you tell us to.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Perfect. Can I start or should I?
Yes. Please speak for a few minutes and then we can start your presentation.
No. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me and for having me today at the conference. And I wish a successful, as it's always, a nice conference. And I'm very looking forward to have this conference face-to-face as well, not online. So today, I hope you can see my screen. I shared right now. Today, I'm going to lecture about contemporary image.
Yeah, 1 minute, and I'll just introduce you with your designation. Our chairperson is sitting in the Baba Atomic Research Center, and his connectivity is a slight issue. So I'll just introduce you to the audience. So we have with us Professor Kaan Ohan. He's Dean, Ankara University, Faculty of Dentistry, Turkey. He's also a distinguished professor, Near East University, Faculty of Dentistry at Cyprus, and also a distinguished professor at the Osaka University in Faculty of Dentistry. And he's a very multifaceted individual and a flourishing scientist. And yes, now we can hear your presentation.
Thank you very much. I will share my presentation again. Yes. Again, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Today, I would like to lecture about the contemporary imaging modalities for dental implants. And also, a little bit, I will mention about the radiation doses and how to reduce the radiation doses in terms of the new technologies, especially in dental implants imaging. So, what to expect from this lecture? I will try to give a background knowledge on implant imaging, especially DBCT.
So, Professor Kaan, sorry to interrupt you. We already have your recorded version in a good resolution format and sound. So we'll play that, and then once that's done, then you can take over the questions. Yeah?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, of course.
Because here the screen's looking minimized. Thank you.
Sure. Let me, yes.
Presentation also.
Dear Chairman, dear distinguished colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank you for having me for this wonderful Congress and also for the organization. Today, I would like to have a lecture about the contemporary imaging modalities for dental implants. So, what to expect from this lecture is I'm going to give you a little bit background knowledge on implant imaging using CBCT and also contemporary imaging modalities. Especially, I would like to indicate the ultrasonography for using dental implant imaging. So let me start by showing an example. Here's a case which was referred to our department because of pain in the anterior region, which you can easily indicate that there are dental implants performed several months ago, but the patient has severe pain, and also when you look at the panoramic radiograph, you can see there's some kind of peri-implantitis or infection in the anterior region of the mandible. We decided to open this patient to surgery, but at the day of the surgery, the patient brought the initial panoramic radiography, which revealed a fracture lesion. So this means that the dentist overlooked this fracture lesion and performed the dental implant treatment. This is the limitation of the 2D panoramic radiography. So in this lecture, I would like to indicate the solution and also the precautions for the 2D imaging, which can be shifted to 3D imaging for dental implant. For this, nowadays, we are using cone beam tomography for having three-dimensional dental implant imaging. The cone beam tomography, in its nature, in its technology, have a different kind of technology from the medical CT, especially in the medical CT, you can take you can take 360 scanning, and in each scan you can have the imaging sagittal, coronal, and axial images. Pretty much the common technology is like this, but what is different is you can assign the field of view that you would like to examine, especially if you are looking for a limited region, then you can choose limited field of view. Of course, I mean, in this lecture, I will also indicate that the dose, the voxel, and the field of view, and overall, the use of COMIM technology as an indication and how to choose the correct field of view, the correct voxel size, and the dose as a whole indication. Let me start with the dose. The most important advantage of the COMIM tomography is the dose itself, because when you have regular imaging medical CT, it's more or less the dose that you obtain from the same region of field is 100 times larger than the COMIM tomography. As you can see in the slide, for a regular field of view, if you are using for a dental implant imaging, the dose more or less is like 10 to 80 microsievert. And of course, if you can check it out, different kind of like COMIM CTs and the different kind of like CTs can give like dramatically higher dose. As you can see from the slide, the medical CT can also have like 100 times more, around 1000 microsievert for regular dental imaging. That's why nowadays we are using regularly COMIM CT. But it should be indicated that if you are taking the larger field of view, it doesn't matter for the CT, it doesn't matter for the CBCT image, you will have the greater dose. Especially, be aware that, not in terms of the patient dose, but also for the environment as well, the approximate effective dose received from the COMIM CT is equivalent to 2 to 5 days. So, this is very important because if you are going to have a larger field of view, then you are going to have ended up with a large dose. There, as I mentioned, there is another technical term which is called like voxel. So what is voxel? Voxel is the smallest 3D element of the volume and typically presented as a cube or a box with a height and width and depth. Just as the 2D images, which made of several pixels, the smaller pixel means that the better quality of the picture itself. So the voxel size on CBCT images is isotropic voxel. This means that all dimensions of the voxel is same, but in CT imaging, which is another different item from like medical CT, the medical CT is non-isotropic voxel. So if you would like to reconstruct, then you will end up, if you are taking your images with non-isotropic, you can end it up with different kind of distortions and so on. So pretty much the most advantageous side of the CBCT is the isotropic voxel. So in this technology, we have not just only the regular scanning mode, but also, as I mentioned, because of the patient dose and also the environment dose, the dose that are given to the environment, we tend to choose low dose mode and or like low dose imaging. In low dose imaging, you can acquire the imaging with the reduced resolution. But the thing is that if the benefits or if the image is diagnostic capable, then you can go for the low dose mode. But if you need higher dose, then this means that you will more or less give much more higher dose, but you will get high HD or high resolution pictures. In today's technology, we have 400 to 670 micron voxel size, especially if you would like to check it out the smallest, let's say a vertical or a root fracture, then we are using this kind of voxel sizes. Here's an example for this. We have a standard mode here, a fracture, which can be overlooked, a horizontal fracture, but if you are taking a high resolution mode, then this fracture is very clear to detect and also to diagnose. But keep in mind that smaller voxel sizes create high resolutions, but also it brings higher radiation dose as well. Let me give you a couple of examples for this. For instance, if you are going to, if you would like to have a better or clear anatomical visualization of the teeth, this is like an HD mode, high resolution. Normally, you can overlook or you can miss these root canals. But here, with the higher resolution, you can easily see the canal distribution and also make 3D imaging, perfect 3D imaging for patients' treatment. Another aspect for the CBCT is and also for the CT is the bone density, especially if you are going to perform the dental implant surgery. Before, we need to clarify the bone density. Pretty much, we have a generally accepted all around the world a classification which was done by Misch. We have, like as in the slide, 5 types of bone, and we have 5 types of Hosfeld unit. So pretty much in medical CTs, we can identify these standardized units, Hosfeld units, but on CBCT image, we have just like mean gray volume, which is disadvantages for a CBCT image. Let me show you an example. Here is a dental implants performed patient, but the patient has like pain and also radiolucent lesion on the panoramic image. But because of the 2D position, we cannot able to identify the source of the problem. But when we go to cross-sectional imaging of the CBCT, as you can see, the bone density was not suitable to put the dental implants here. If we have this kind of standardized, let's say, Hosfeld units, or like standardized classification, then we cannot go for these kind of like patients to perform dental implants. And also, in the end, we didn't have such implant failures. But as in this case, we didn't consider the bone density, and we performed the dental implant, and also we ended up with the implant failure. There is one thing that I should mention. As I mentioned, we don't have all CBCT Hosfeld units, but what we have, mean gray volume. There are a couple of vendors are working on these to identify standardized Hosfeld units, but so far we don't have such thing. But when the dual source technology is going to come, in the future, we may have this kind of standardized units, whatever the name is going to be, in order to perform the dental implant imaging or the bone classification. So let me continue with the examination of CBCT. As I mentioned, it's pretty much the same as CT. We have like axial section, we have sagittal section, and also we have coronal section. It's pretty much the same in medical CT. And also if you are, and the most advantageous part of the CBCT is the isotropic walk side. So you don't need to make a reconstruction again. When performing this kind of dental implant imaging, pre or post dental implant imaging, you can use both axial, both sagittal and the cross-sectional imaging to figure out the exact planning of the dental implant. What I would like to mention, especially for dental implant imaging, you need to figure out the exact position, and you have to take cross-section images. What cross-section images can bring to you both posterior anterior and also buccolingual position that you can identify and that you can plan for the dental implant imaging. For us, in dentistry, we have OPG, as I mentioned, panoramic radiography, but with using the CBCT imaging, you can also use panoramic reconstructions. Pretty much it's same as the regular OPG, but what you have the advantage here to change the layer and to figure out exactly the pathology or the localization that you want to perform the dental imaging. As I mentioned in COMIP CT imaging, there are too many advantages, but also we have artifacts as well. We have like physics-based artifacts, which is like noise, beam hardening, partial volume as well. And also we have artifacts due to the patient movement as well. In 2 recent studies, we can easily tell that the prevalence of movement for the patients or for the cases is 20%, which is really a high amount of like cases, especially if you are going to take re-exposure, means that giving a re-dose. So this means that we have to be very strict for the patient movement in order to reduce the artifacts as well. So in another study, as you can see, patients who received a scan with the small field of view, CBCT, were significantly more often rescanned than those with the larger field of view. So this means that if you are scanning for dental imaging, especially like a small field of view, you can end up more artifacts. So we have to be precautiously avoid these kind of like artifacts as well for the patient movement. Let me show you another example. As I mentioned, we have like hard tissues and the soft tissues, and we have also dental implant material. When you have these like dense material, when the X-ray passage from these dense materials, there will be some kind of like hollow around the these dental implant or dense materials. And if we are scanning dental implants, post-dental implants, it can be confused with the peri-implantitis as well. But this is not the case. This is just physics, and this is just like the artifact of the CBCT imaging. So keep in mind about beam hardening. Another thing is the starburst or streak artifacts. This can be due to the sharp changes in density as well. For example, air versus bone. This is because, again, physics, this is because, again, the techniques, by the limitation in digital sampling. Of course, we have the metallic artifacts as well. If you have like chrome bridge restorations and so on, or orthodontic bracelets, then you will end up like this. And this is not like diagnostic, so you have to take the re-exposure. Sometimes, because we are using this kind of metal artifact reduction algorithm, if we have this kind of metal artifact reductions algorithm in our machines, we must use in order to avoid the retakes of the patients. And of course, as I mentioned, be careful for the patient movement as well. Another artifact is the ring artifact. Again, because of the technical, as you can see, when the machine is scanning 360, 180 or 360, then you will end up with this kind of like hollow or ring artifacts. Sometimes these ring artifacts can be dramatically and can also like include the regions of the teeth and the surrounding structures, which make like impossible to diagnose anyways. So one important thing in dental implant imaging is like, what is streak artifact, what is beam hardening, or what is peri-implantitis? Honestly, in CBCT imaging, it is really hard to distinguish, especially in the axial imaging. But when you make like cross-section images, especially if you have this kind of like radiolucent regions around and also apical region of the dental implant, it's more likely to have like peri-implantitis. But as I mentioned, to make such a diagnosis, it's very hard, and we prefer having like 2D imaging rather than 3D imaging in order to have a final diagnosis. Let me show you an example for diagnostic accuracy of CBCT versus intraoral imaging for peri-implant bone defects. So, according to this study, the diagnostic accuracy and reliability of CBCT was superior to intraoral radiography, and the classification and the measurement of peri-implant bone as well. And if you have like 3D CBCT imaging, it adds substantial information, especially for the peri-implant bone defect. But as I mentioned, please be careful. If you are not going to make a standardized scanning protocol, if you have like not just only one implant imaging, but whole crown bridge restoration that makes severe artifacts, then you will end up not like diagnosing from the CBCT imaging as well. Here's another examples for the CBCT imaging. As you can see in the intraoral, the CBCT and the macro CT imaging of the same defect, and pretty much the CBCT and the macro CT imaging is the gold standard. Pretty much CBCT and the intraoral imaging is more or less the same, but CBCT imaging can have much more better diagnosis. As I mentioned, in order to distinguish the soft tissue and to have some kind of standardized Hounsfield units, we need like dual energy CBCT. This technology is already being used in medical CTs like for several years, but it's just arrived to CBCT for dental use. What can give like advantage to us if we have like dual energy spectral CT, we can reduce, as in the slide, the artifacts that is due to the dense structures like implant imaging. And in the end, with these dual source CTs or this technique could be measured, it could be used to measure the jaw bone density in dentistry and may soon replace the MDCT Hounsfield units. Of course, this kind of technology should be improved a little bit in order to use in dental clinic as well. But what I would like to mention about the tilt angle, sometimes as a radiologist, when you are checking with a clinician, they say that, look, I am just like opening the area and we are just seeing like 10 millimeter over here, but when I open it, it's like just only 8 or it's just like 12. So the thing is that we should know the tilt angle here. So in order to have some kind of a better delineation and also better measurement, so we have to exactly localize the field of view that we are taking in terms of standardized the tilt angle as well. For instance, if you can change the tilt angle like +10, +20, -10, -20, then the thing that you are measuring is dramatically changed. Let me show you an example. Here is a 90 degrees for the dental implant imaging. The tilt angle is 90 degrees over here, but when you change the tilt angle here, the measurement is also changing dramatically. So you are measuring more than this. So what we should do, we should identify the field of view according to the patient's occlusal plane. Especially the scanning area should be in the middle and should be, as I mentioned, reshaped or reorientated depending on the patient's anatomy as well. Let me continue another technology that we are using in the implantology. So nowadays, we started to use ultrasound imaging in implantology, which I'm going to refer one of my book here and also recently published, both of them published 2021. So I'm going to refer the cases from this. But what we have here, especially in terms of ultrasonographic imaging, we have like intraoral probe. So these kind of hockey stick probes can be used intraorally for evaluation periapical lesions and the implant imaging, and also not just for like oral mucosal lesions, but also like guided interventions as well. There are a couple of ultrasound companies, especially that develop these kind of intraoral imaging. So this is one of them, and not just only them, but if you have a hockey stick, you can easily use a regular ultrasonography as well, not just like a dedicated intraoral ultrasonography. The important thing is the resolution of the hockey stick probe. If you would like to take a clear image, the megahertz of the probe should be high in order to get clear image. As I mentioned, there are like a couple of different ultrasonography applications in the periodontology, especially if you're going to perform such gingival measurements, then you can go for this like periodontal ultrasound imaging in order to measure the thickness of the gingiva and the periodontal tissue as well, which can be used intraorally. Let me show you an example. Here, there's a periapical lesion over here, and here is the root. We have also healing process, and also we can quantify here the Doppler, and we can quantify the healing over here intraorally. As I mentioned, it's not just for the dental imaging, but also for the intraoral periapical imaging as well. Another example, here is a lateral periodontal cyst. And here is the imaging, but here you can see the lateral periodontal cyst as well in the ultrasonography image. Let me tell you a very important thing. The ultrasound cannot pass through the bones. So that's why if we have a lesion, but it's not dehiscence or it's no erosion on the bone itself, we cannot able to see anything. All we can see this kind of like artifact, acoustic shadowing artifact in ultrasonography imaging. But when the sound pass through the bone from the dehiscence or the pathology itself has some kind of exophytic exproliferation, then you can easily see with the ultrasound image. Let me show you a couple of examples from the high frequency ultrasonography imaging. Here is the mucosa, here is the submucosa, and we can see the mucosal layer and the intersect muscles over here. Another case, we can see the mucosa, submucosa, and here is the tooth roots on the ultrasound imaging. What can be the advantage for us, especially when you are having like third molar surgery and so on, we cannot easily identify the lingual nerve, all the nerve itself. But when using this kind of acoustic intraoral probes, we can use the we can see the lingual nerve and also distribution of the lingual nerve due to the surgery. Another thing is that we can identify the socket augmentation. Here is before and after, and we can follow up without any radiation, neither to the patient nor to the environment itself. And of course, one of the main problems is for us to identify the early squamous cell carcinomas intraorally. But what you can see here with the high frequency ultrasound applications, we can identify with a high Doppler. If you have a high Doppler imaging, this means that there is some kind of like angiogenesis over here, and this may relate to the squamous cell carcinoma as well. What ultrasound can bring to you also the invasion. So you have this exophytic proliferation, but we cannot able to see the invasion. But in the ultrasound imaging from the alveolar bone, there is like an invasion to the connective tissue, which is ended up with the squamous cell carcinoma as well. We can use for probe evaluation before freegingual flap operation. Here is a case, right and left palatal mucosal thickness of the same patient, and you can also identify with the Doppler imaging as well. Another case, you can follow like 1 week, 3 months, or whatever the instance that you would like to follow. But the most important thing is we have no lack of radiation to patient, to environment, and so we can easily follow up the patient. Another example with the B mode and the color mode of the guided tooth regeneration here as well. As you can see, the healing process and also the follow-up of the healing process. But the thing is that when you have a color flow image with the increase, then this means that you have a disruption in the healing and possibly tissue inflammation as well. Here's another case from one of our study. Thin palatal mucosa of a young female patient, and before and after the gingival graft operation, we could identify the thickness. We could able to identify where we are going to take the graft material and how we are going to take it with a single ultrasonography unit. And we can easily follow up that. Here is the follow up, and you can see how the Doppler imaging shows the healing process of the gingival flap. Moreover, we can also identify if we are using like PRP or PRP on the donor area, then we can follow up the healing process of that area as well. Lastly, I would like to mention about the artifacts of the ultrasonography as well. As I mentioned, the sound cannot able to pass the dense structures, cannot able to pass the bone and so on. So this means that when the sound is crashes over here. It cannot go all the way down. What it makes is like acoustic shadowing over here and over here. But if you have such crown restorations, you can end up with reverberation artifact and a comet tail artifact, we call it. These kind of artifacts can be seen especially in cystic lesions as well. But here, in terms of like crown restorations, we can also see this comet tail artifacts as well. And what is important for us, especially in terms of like implant imaging, you can make transversal and longitudinal images of the area as well. Here is a case, you have this crown restoration, you have this like hyperechoic area, jawbone, and here is the implant imaging. So you can identify the soft tissue integration of the implant imaging here as well. Another case, here is the clinical photo, 2D photo, and CT, regular CT, cross-sectional images, implant, abutment, and crown. But what we can especially see or exactly see, here is the bone area, implant, abutment, and crown. It's more or less the same area. But in addition, what we can see on ultrasound imaging is the soft tissue. We can also measure the soft tissue thickness as well from here. Not just only transversal, we can measure like longitudinal as well. As in this case, we can measure the soft tissue from buccally and lingually and follow-up. And after the follow-up, we can identify if there's going to be a failure or an inflammation from the ultrasonography as well. Here's another case. This is the clinical photo and 2D radiography. There's some kind of an image over here, a radiolucent image, but we are not sure if there's like a peri-implantitis due to the limitation of 2D. And here we have this like ultrasonography image, longitudinal ultrasonography image, and we can identify the soft tissue and the bone structures as well without any disruption of the implant as well. More or less the same thing, but in this case, we have like peri-implantitis in relation to the clinical photo. We can see the bone as well. We can see the bone, implant platform, crestal bone, and the abutment. But what we can see here, the inflammation itself, as we can also see in the 2D radiography, but in ultrasonography much more clearly as well. This is one of our study that we recently published. If you are using intraoral imaging, we can identify the dehiscence and the fenestration along the implant images as well. Lastly, I would like to mention what is going to be this technology. Recently, this technology is like growing, and we have like 3D ultrasonography applications. When we have used longitudinal and transfer ultrasonography image and combine everything together, then we can end up with these nice images, tooth, implant clone, and also facial bone level and the soft tissue as in the clinical photo. So pretty much, I'm not quite sure if we are going to have these like in the near future, but I guess like a couple of years later, we may be talking about the 3D ultrasonography. And this is gonna be a huge advantage for like patient as well and the environment as well, because it's gonna be free from radiation. So lastly, I would like to give the last word to Charles Darwin. So it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one of the most adaptable to change that survives, as Charles Darwin mentioned. So I would like to thank you for all of you listening to me, and I will be happy to reply questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Khan. So initially, when we put your presentation on, you were not visible on screen. So now everybody can see you. So I request Professor Dr. Mohammad Faisal, Professor, Faculty of Dental Sciences, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi, who's one of our chairs for this session, to please conduct
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I thank Professor Colry for such a wonderful lecture on the oxidative stress in malignancies. So not only cancer, it is generally accepted that reactive oxygen species has a role in development of various chronic disorders also. What we see in oral and maxillofacial malignancies and pre-malignant disorders, we've been using antioxidant therapy as a preventive agents for prevention of malignancies in various oral and maxillofacial pre-malignant lesions such as oral submucous fibrosis, leukoplakia. These are oral pre-malignant lesions, and we have been using oral antioxidant therapies. Sir, I would like to ask you a question. How important is the use of antioxidant therapy in preventing these pre-malignant lesions to change into a malignancy?
Well, actually, it's very hard to reply for me because I'm a maxillofacial radiologist, not like a oral oncologist. But to say the truth, like in combining with my area of expertise, I can say that, of course, I mean, it's very important to have like antioxidant therapy. Actually, the thing is that when you apply this, there are several literatures are coming out about this, and in these literatures you can also do some kind of sonographic treatment plus the antioxidant treatment, not just only for like treatment but also for the diagnosing as well. And nowadays in ultrasonography you have the advantage in order to measure the Doppler features of the tissues and of the pathology as well. And as far as I read, there are like a couple of literatures and it is indicating that this antioxidant therapy is like very effective, and you can also measure the outcome with the ultrasonography, especially with the Doppler instruments.
I think the same question Professor Colry also can take it up. So you're on mute, sir.
Thank you very much for your question. What I believe is that we need to assure the levels of either oxidative reactive species and antioxidant system before entering a clinical trial, because it was demonstrated in the past that, for example, selenium increased the risk of prostate cancer and not decreased the risk as expected. So if there is no decrease of the antioxidant system, there is no use of them, of course.
Thank you.
But if there is a decrease, it may be, in that case, antioxidant must be used. It is just necessary to verify that they are needed.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Professor Khan, I have a question for you regarding cone beam computed tomography for dental implants. How accurate is the CBCT in defining the bone density where in the area of maxilla and mandible where you are going to place implants? See, normally you see so many patients who come up, especially in the maxilla. You just find a thin rim of cortical bone. Inside, they may have a good quantity of bone, but inside there's hardly any cortical or corticocancellous bone. The CBCT doesn't appear to be very accurate, and sometimes it appears to be very accurate, and these are certain issues that you come up as a clinician.
Well, actually, I have these questions from many clinicians because when they are referring to CBCT for implant imaging, let's say if you are making a report and say like you have like 10 meters of bone, and when they open it and they can return back, it's not a 10 meter, it's like 12, or it's just like 8 meters or angulation and so on. We had these feedbacks, but pretty much, as I already explained in my lecture, that DCBCT is like some kind of gold standard. Right now, we are not using CT anymore because of the radiation doses and everything. But if you are not considering the tilt angle while scanning the patient, for instance, as I showed, if it's gonna be like 10 degrees, like plus 10 degrees, like minus or 20 or vice versa, then you will end up measuring different from the same area. Let's say if you're going to position the head of the patient is like straight ahead, like 0 degrees, and if you are measuring 10 meters, when you switch the head a little bit up or down, like 10, 20 degrees, then you will end up measuring different things. So pretty much, this is the responsibility of the technician and also the responsibility of the radiologist as well. They have to position the patient correctly. And when they were reformatting the image, they have to reformatting according to the occlusal plane and according to the area that they would like to make the implant. So pretty much I agree with you. So if you are not considered these, you can measure different, from the same area, you can measure different. But the thing is that you have to consider the tilt angles from the CBCT imaging. If you consider, pretty much it's gold standard. What we are measuring, that you can find in the surgery as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Professor Khan, another question would be, how accurate sometimes these softwares, especially the cone beam CT softwares, they give you certain bone density values in Hounsfield unit where you can, but how accurate is that? And since you don't have any tool for measuring the density of the jawbone.
That's true. I mean, there are several vendors right now claiming that we can measure the Hounsfield unit density, but pretty much because of the technique of the CBCT, you cannot measure a standardized Hounsfield unit unless if you are using a CT image. But pretty much, I know that there are like several companies, they say that in our software, you can measure the bone density, but it's not likely. But as I already shown, new technologies are coming out. When we start to use the dual source CBCTs, then indeed we will start to use and we will start to measure standardized mean gray value. It's not like the Hounsfield value, but it's gonna be more or less the same. And in terms of the bone density, what you are measuring will be more or less the same what you get from the dual source energy CBCTs. But overall, right now, we don't have any software or we don't have any CBCT machine that measures the Hounsfield unit. So, of course, I mean, this is some kind of a marketing. If you are going to go to a company and say that, oh, we can measure the Hounsfield unit. But pretty much technically, it is impossible to do that.
Again, I would like to congratulate you on a wonderful lecture, Professor Khan and Professor Kolri. Especially the ultrasound part, I really enjoyed it. What you can do with the tool, which is non-radiation tool. So many different aspects you have shown regarding the use of ultrasound in the oral cavity. That was wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Sonali.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Faisal. That was really wonderful and a very interactive session, especially from the oral surgery and oral radiology perspective. And I'm very happy that we have all this on record and we can use it for, postgraduate teaching also at some point in time. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. As we move on to the next session, I want to introduce the chairpersons, Professor Dr. Nagaraj Muligoyal and Dr. Madhuri Gawande. They're both in. Dr. Nagaraj
Recording stopped.
Dr. Nagaraj is head Department of Radiation Oncology, Nanavati Max Super Speciality Hospital and Research Center. He's also the President, Society for Radiation Research
Recording
and
in
Communication.
progress.
Professor Madhuri is a professor and head of the Department of Oral Pathology and Microbiology, Sharad Pawar Dental College and Hospital, Datta Meghe Institute of Medical Sciences, Wardha, which is in Maharashtra. So I give the stage to the chairpersons. Thank you, Dr. Nagaraj and Dr. Madhuri.
Thank you, Dr. Sonali. I was listening to earlier lectures, and they're very, very interesting, except especially the ultrasound of the oral cavity, which I was not quite aware. And that definitely was information. And I'm sure the session to follow, that's the current one, will also give you a lot of information. We have 2 talks, and I have a co-host, Dr. Madhuri Gawande, who will talk about the next colleague, and she will also have a final comments. And I have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Clement Edjo. I hope I pronounced it right. And he's Associate Professor of Biology, Department of Biological Sciences, College of Science and Technology, Florida. Welcome to you, Dr. Clement, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Sunil and Dr. Nagarajan. I welcome you all for this session, and I'm very glad to be a part of this scientific event. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, madam.
Yes, thanks. We can start, I think.
Yeah, Dr. Clement, the floor is yours.
So, Dr. Edjo, I want you to just speak a few words before we play your presentation. So, are you there? Professor Clement? Okay. So, we'll just start his presentation. He'll join in. Oh, yeah, he's here. He's here.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clement Edjo. I am Associate Professor of Biology at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. Before I start, I would like to thank the organizer of this important conference. And today I will present the therapeutic effects of fruit consumption on the COVID-19 pandemic. On February 11, 2020, the World Health Organization announced an official name for the disease that is causing the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak, first identified in Wuhan, China. The new name of this disease is coronavirus disease 2019, abbreviated as COVID-19. In COVID-19, CO stands for corona, VI stands for virus, and D stands for disease. The incidence and mortality of COVID-19 keep increasing. Let's take a look at the population who are at risk of COVID-19 infection. The answer is clear. Everyone can actually be affected or infected with the COVID-19 at every age. However, 2 groups of people are at higher risk of getting severe COVID-19 compared to others. This includes people who are over 60 years old and people with underlying medical conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetics, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer. The risk of severe disease gradually increases with age, starting from around 40 years old. People in this age group should protect themselves and in turn protect others that may be more vulnerable. What are some signs and symptoms associated with COVID-19? People with COVID-19 have a wide range of symptoms that can be reported. and symptoms may appear within 12 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. People with this symptom may have COVID-19, and the following symptoms are the sign of COVID-19: fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty in breathing, fatigue, muscle and body ache, headaches, new loss of taste or smell, sore throats, congestion or runny nose, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. The COVID-19 affects the major part of the organ system, such as the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the immune system, and the urinary system. The following prevention should be taken by those who are affected with the COVID-19, such as clean hands frequently with soap and water or with alcohol-based hand rubs. Stay at home whenever is possible, as well stay in a separate room from other family members. And also, when coughing or sneezing, cover mouth and nose with flex elbow, and use disposable tissue and discard them immediately. Let's now take a look at some of the treatment options available for COVID-19. The current targeted treatment for COVID-19 approved by the Food and Drug Administration is Remdesivir, making Remdesivir the first-line treatment option for COVID-19 treatment. It acts as an inhibitor of RNA polymerase and its characteristic and pharmacokinetics have been studied in other coronavirus infection. Other drug use include antiviral drugs such as ribavirin and anti-malarial drugs such as chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. Currently, there are 3 vaccines available for COVID-19 in the United States, including the Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Each patient carries his own doctor inside him. And as we can see on this image here, the doctor is saying to a patient that we have exhausted all conventional measures. One last desperate option is to put you on an alternative natural medicine that has a 96% success rate. So this leads us to take a look at some of the natural ways of preventing COVID-19. Traditionally, vegetable, fruit, and vitamins have been used for improving human health and preventing or treating many diseases. Recent published study in our lab revealed that garlic, ascorbic acid or vitamin C, curcumin, black seed, vitamin D, and ginger have in common 8 pharmacological effects, including antibacterial, anti-cancer, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, antiviral, anti-mutagenic, antioxidant, and immunomodulatory activity related to the causative agent, and or symptom of COVID-19. Here we show the 8 property, the 8 pharmacological property that plants, some natural plants, some medicinal plants, as well vitamins have in common, including antibacterial, anti-cancer, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, anti-mutagenic, antioxidant, antiviral, and immunomodulatory activities against COVID-19. This view graph shows the mechanisms of action, how vitamin D work. Vitamin D acts through several mechanisms of action to prevent and control COVID-19 infection by forming physical barrier, boosting cellular natural immunity and adaptive immunity, and stimulating the release of antimicrobial peptide. So when vitamin D is administered to a patient, it stimulates some of the pharmacological property or effects such as anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antiviral, and immunomodulatory. And when all these property, medicinal property are stimulated to enhance the immune system, the result is that there is regulation of the expression of the antimicrobial peptide, which help the patient to have a short stay in the hospital, as well reduce the duration of the mechanical ventilation and attenuate organ dysfunction such as lung injury and reduce hospital mortality. Working on this topic, we recently published 2 papers, and one of them is the chemopreventive effect of fruit and vegetable consumption of COVID-19 pandemic, and the second is the pharmacological effect of selected medicinal plant and vitamins against COVID-19. The objective of this study is to test the hypothesis that high intake of fruit and vegetable may prevent COVID-19 incidence and mortality and reduce the mortality rate. We collected the data from PEGO website, which is a publicly available domain, and use machine learning to analyze our data. Here we have our result showing COVID-19 assessment based on low vegetable and fruit consumption in developed nations. So we see here on this table here on the left, we see the well-developed countries, and in the well-developed country here we have Australia to the United States, and we see the amount of fruit and vegetable that they consume is really low, and the incidence of COVID-19 and the mortality rate is really high. And we can see on the right, we have the case fatality ratio. And when now we want to compare all these countries and look at the case fatality ratio, we can see that countries like the United Kingdom have the highest case fatality ratio with 10.69%, following by France with 7.07% and Canada with 6.45%. However, the most country that they have the large amount of incidence and mortality of COVID-19 is the United States. But when we look at the case fatality ratio, we can see that the United States is not badly affected as the United Kingdom, France, and Canada. This figure here, in figure 1, we have on the right the incidence, and on the left the incidence, and on the right the mortality rate. And it just represents, the data that we have on the table in the form of a graph. Let's now take a look at the COVID-19 assessment based on high vegetable and fruit consumption in wealthy countries. So here are most of the countries that consume a high level of vegetable and fruit around the world. And this country includes China, Russia, Korea, Kuwait, Malta, Oman, and Turkey. And we can see that the level of vegetable consumed per person is really high. And when we look at the incidence and mortality rate of COVID-19, we can really see that the number is really low. The number is really low. And when we take a look now at the case fatality ratio, we can see that China have a case fatality ratio a little high compared to other countries. This can be explained by the fact that COVID-19 first occurred in China, and it took them time, to figure out how to do and protect themselves. So let's now take a look at COVID-19 assessment based on high vegetable and fruit consumption in developing nation. So in the poor nation. So here we have, the poor nation, and we can see that most of these poor nations consume a lot of fruit and vegetable. And now when we take a look also at the incidence and death, we can see that the incidence and death is relatively low compared to the developed nation that do not eat fruit and vegetable. And even though the incidence and death is low, when we take a look at the case fatality ratio, we can see that 2 countries, including Niger and Egypt, have a high fatality ratio. And this may be due to the fact that there's limited sanitation and limited access, to medical care. In conclusion, developed countries where people eat a lower amount of vegetable and fruit have higher COVID-19 incidence and death rate compared to the wealthy country where people eat the most vegetable. A wealthy country where people eat enough or more vegetable have a lower COVID-19 incidence and death rate compared to developed country where people each lower amount of vegetable. A developing country where people eat a higher amount of vegetable and fruit have a lower COVID-19 incidence and death rate. However, we observe higher case fatality rate in two countries, particularly in Egypt and Nigeria. The high mortality rate observed in these two developing countries may be due to the fact that there is a lack and control of measures such as hand washing, keeping social distances, wearing masks, poor sanitation, and limited medical intervention. Here, we demonstrate that intake of fruit and vegetable may prevent or reduce the incidence and mortality rate of COVID-19. Together, fruit and vegetable act as potential chemopreventive agent for COVID-19 due to their antiviral property. Vegetable and fruit are loaded with mineral and nutrients such as zinc, beta-carotene, vitamin C, and E that may treat COVID-19. In addition to our study, COVID-19 can be prevented by keeping social distances, hand washing, tracking contact and quarantine, shelter in place, environmental hygiene, and wearing a face mask. You know, in research, collaboration and networking is very important. So if you are interested in my research, do not hesitate to contact me, and I will be happy, to work with you. At this moment, I would like to thank my chair, Dr. Lekan Lachiwo, my dean, Dr. Risha Elo. This work is financially supported with a charity contribution from Gogo. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. It was a very interesting, information about COVID. I think there seems to be one more variant. I hope all this stands true for even that. Are we going to take questions now or later? Or maybe later.
Later. Perfect, later.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next speaker, Dr. Farombi, Professor Farombi from Nigeria, talking on colavariant and diphenyl diselenide protection against neurotoxicity of endocrine and manganese in rat and Drosophila. So we go back to the bench. So looking forward to the talk. This is a very diverse topics, all put together excellently in a very coherent manner by Dr. Sonali. Let's listen to Professor Farombi from Nigeria. Thank you so much.
It gives me great pleasure this day to be part of this year's symposium on metal ions in biology and medicine. And today I will be giving the lecture titled The Role of Selected Chemopreventive Agents in Drosophila melanogaster and rat models of a drug-induced neurotoxicity. I'm Ebenezer Olatunde Farombi from the Department of Biochemistry, University of Ibadan in Nigeria. And each time I give this lecture or a lecture like this, I try to show these slides just for other people in case of a collaboration. In my laboratory at Ibadan, we are involved in nutrigenomics research. We screen phytochemicals for antioxidants and anti-inflammatory agents for cancer chemoprevention. We are also involved in elucidating the cellular and molecular toxicology mechanism of plant-based phytochemicals, and we are also involved in the signal transduction networks and elucidation of the molecular mechanism involved with chemopreventive agents. For today's lecture, I'd like to show and talk about these slides which has revealed the neurodegenerative properties of neurodegenerative diseases globally. And when we talk about that, we are talking on Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. For instance, up to 1 billion people all over the world have been diagnosed or shown to exhibit one neurological disorders or the other. And about 35 million people worldwide have exhibited Alzheimer's disease and also Parkinson's disease, as well as a frontotemporal dementia. These are common neurodegenerative diseases globally, and we have that in Africa, in Europe, in United States, and in different parts of the world. For instance, according to reports where we see the epidemiology of Parkinson's disease, and from the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, up to about 10 million people worldwide have been shown to be affected with the Parkinson's disease, which is a very, very serious neurodegenerative disorders characterized by motor symptoms and the inability of individuals to exhibit a proper gait and to be able to walk properly. Manganese is a naturally occurring trace element and is widely distributed on the earth crust. And manganese is found in fertilizers, in pesticides, in gasoline additive, and also found in some other environmental agents that humans are occupationally and unoccupationally exposed to. And inhalation and injections happen to be the two major routes of exposure to manganese. Manganese have been shown by several investigators to exhibit neurotoxic effects, and the brain is the principal target during manganese toxicity. Other reports from occupational studies have also associated elevated level of manganese with a permanent damage, including impaired neurological and neuromuscular control and mental disorders in the system. Oxidative stress is very, very important and pivotal as far as a manganese toxicity is involved. And oxidative stress, alteration in calcium metabolism, more or less represent the molecular mechanism involved in neurotoxicity of manganese. Manganese also interferes with mitochondria, particularly, and it interferes with oxidative phosphorylation, and this leads to increased generation of reactive oxygen species capable of damaging molecular structures and biological macromolecules. And chemoprevention appears to be an answer to a number of brain diseases on account of several research activities and also on account of epidemiological findings. And here, chemoprevention, I define it as the use of a non-toxic chemical compounds or agents to inhibit, to retard, and to decrease the multi-stage process of cancer, because chemoprevention more or less originated from carcinogenesis, but nowadays they are applying it to some other aspects of the human diseases, especially brain disease. So chemoprevention, which involves a pharmacological intervention, has the capacity of increasing the lifespan of individual, and also has the capacity of delaying incident of various diseases. Also, neuroprotection by phytochemicals and nutraceuticals one way or the other, have been shown to halt progressive neurodegenerative diseases, especially Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and some other form of neurological disorders. Herbal medicine is common and is a practice in developing countries, and also in form of alternative and alternative medicine in developed world. Herbal medicine appears to be very, very popular nowadays, and have been shown one way or the other to improve memory. It enhances memory and other cognitive functions. And flavonoid-rich foods are substances containing organoselenium compounds especially, have also been found to have a positive influence on learning as well as memory. Selenium is what one of the things we are going to discuss in this lecture, and it's a very, very important, it's an essential trace element with a long history of health benefits. And for instance, selenium has been found in the expression of about 25 seleno proteins which modulate cellular and redox status. And most of the biological functions of selenium have been associated with antioxidant properties, anti-inflammatory properties, and have been shown to actually protect against the damage to the brain as well as to attenuate oxidative damage. Diphenyl diselenide is an important. Diphenyl diselenide is a highly lipophilic organic agent and have been shown to have antioxidants and anti-inflammatory and anti-nociceptive as well as neuroprotective properties. Quercetin is a flavonoid that is found in a number of fruits and also found in apples, found in orange and some citruses, and it has a lot of biological activities like free radical scavenging properties. It's a metachelator. It inhibits calcium flux and also modulates a lot of redox enzyme. And the objective of this particular presentation is to explore the protective properties of diphenyl diselenide and colaviron in Drosophila melanogaster model of manganese and rotenone-induced neurotoxicity, as well as the protective role of quercetin in manganese-induced oxidative stress and apoptosis in the brain of Western rats. Now, we have been working on the Drosophila for quite some time, and the Drosophila melanogaster is very, very important in toxicological studies as well as chemopreventive properties and studies, and on account of the ability of Drosophila melanogaster to represent an alternative mammalian models, because, for instance, the genetic homology of Drosophila is more or less similar to that of humans, and approximately 75% of non-human diseases have a match with the fruit fly genome, and therefore this particular model is very, very important and can be used in a lot of studies, including neurological studies. For instance, for several years now, genetically amenable Drosophila melanogaster has been used as a suitable model system in the study of human neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and other cognitive disorders that we have talked about earlier on. I'd like to more or less talk about our earlier toxicological studies on the fruit flies. For instance, we've been able to show involvement of oxidative stress in 4-venin cyclohexene induced toxicity in Drosophila melanogaster. We have also shown ovotoxicant effect of a 4-phenyl cyclohexane and 1,2-monoepoxide. That epoxide as they disrupt the redox status and as they modify different electrophile sensitive target enzymes and genes in Drosophila melanogaster. We have also reported that dietary consumption of monosodium glutamate induces adaptive response and reduction in the lifespan of Drosophila melanogaster. Also, in terms of chemoprevention, we have demonstrated that hesperidine, a citrus bioflavonoid, alleviates trichloroethylene-induced oxidative stress in Drosophila melanogaster. We have also reported that diphenyl diselenide has effect on chlorpyrifos, induced toxicity in Drosophila melanogaster. For this presentation today, I present the effect of a diphenyl diselenide, and how it protects against mortality, locomotor deficits, and oxidative stress in Drosophila melanogaster model of a manganese-induced neurotoxicity. The first figure here shows how manganese induced the mortality of lions after they were exposed for 7 days. As we can see, manganese affected mortality and increased the mortality. And the slides B, you can see that the percentage of flies that survived after 7 days are more or less completely reduced, and addition or supplementation with the 10 micromole of diphenyl diselenide improve the mortality as well as the percentage of flies that survived after 7 days. Here is a slide that shows the effect of manganese as it occurs in the affected locomotor responses in the Drosophila melanogaster, and the ability to inhibit acetylcholinesterase activity. Acetylcholinesterase is an enzyme that hydrolyzes acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. So a completely destruction of this enzyme as a way of reducing the concentration of acetylcholine, and therefore can affect locomotion, and as well can also cause a lot of neurological disorders. And now, manganese induced oxidative stress in a Drosophila melanogaster. This slide shows how via Fenton reaction and Naber-Weiss reaction, hydroxy radicals can be produced, and this hydroxy radical that is very, very reactive in the system can more or less damage a lot of biological macromolecules, and can more or less affect lipid peroxidation. So in these slides, administration of manganese to flies reduce the total thiol and also increase the level of reactive oxygen species and nitrogen species, and also increase thiobarbituric acid reactive substances when they were administered after 7 days. But upon treatment with diphenyl diselenide and 10 micromole and 20 micromole were able to more or less modulate the effect of manganese on the total thiol, as well as its effect on reactive oxygen and nitrogen species, and one way or the other reduce its effect on lipid peroxidation. Manganese depresses antioxidant enzyme, catalase and glutathione S transferase activity were measured. And as we can see here, manganese reduced the activity of this enzyme, but the effect was modulated by diphenyl diselenide. We can therefore conclude as part of this study that diphenyl diselenide protected against manganese-induced toxicity in Drosophila melanogaster by mechanism involving reduction of mortality, inhibition of oxidative stress indices, and the maintenance of endogenous antioxidant system. Diphenyl diselenide supplementation was also associated with neuroprotection, as it characterized by improvement of acetylcholinesterase activity and locomotor function in the Drosophila melanogaster. This compound may therefore be a promising chemopreventive drug candidate against a neurotoxicity resulting from acute manganese exposure. Now, the second part of this study has to do with a particular compound that is very, very important, and especially in Western Africa, which involves its role in traditional hospitality and the naming ceremony, and is derived from the Garcinia cola species. We have a species like that in Africa, and there is another species in also India and in Asian continent known as a Garcinia cambodia. Now, but for this purpose, we are talking about the Garcinia cola seeds from Africa. A compound has been isolated from it, and it is called a colaviron, which is a bioflavonoid antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent that elicits a lot of biological functions and pharmacological properties. Colaviron have been shown to inhibit cancer by mechanisms involving methylation, and it has also been shown to have an anti-inflammatory effect. It's also hepatoprotective, and it also inhibits apoptosis. We have some of these papers to show the activity or the role or the pharmacological properties of a colaviron. It's a methylator. Colaviron is an anti-inflammatory compound. Colaviron is a free radical scavenger, as it has been shown to downregulate and also to reduce oxidative stress and free radical generation and DNA damage in human lymphocytes, as well as rat and liver cells. Now, the background papers for this small discussion on the effect of a colaviron in improving cognitive function and neuroprotection. These papers are premised on the paper shows on this slide. Here we show that colaviron protects against the cell death in a PC2 cells exposed to atrazine. And we also show here that colaviron protects against human dopaminergic cells against atrazine-induced insult. In totality, this paper shows the neuroprotective properties of a colaviron against atrazine-induced cytotoxicity. Atrazine has been shown to mimic Parkinson's symptoms in terms of effects, and therefore we can more or less say that the colaviron from a Garcinia cola has a lot of potential in the modulation of a neurodegenerative diseases, especially a Parkinson's disease. Here we show that colaviron increases longevity and reduces oxidative stress and prevent neurotoxicity in flies. This paper was published long ago, and I quickly go on review it. Now, here is a longevity curve, and a colaviron at 200 milligram per kilogram body weight elicited the most longevity, activity, and the survivor compared with all the other doses that were administered. Subsequently, we chose a 200 milligram per kilogram body weight of a colaviron and administered it to the flies. And here we can see that the rotenone reduced the acetylcholinesterase activity and also affected the locomotion. But the treatment with the Garcinia colaviron was able to modulate its role on the acetylcholinesterase and negative geotaxis. Hydrogen peroxide and catalase activity were affected by rotenone treatment, which one way or the other were affected by administration of a colaviron. Glutathione S transferase activity was reduced by rotenone, and the thiol levels was also reduced by rotenone. And colaviron at a 200 milligram per kilogram body weight affected and modulated the effect of a rotenone on the thiol level and the glutathione S transferase. Nitric oxide, which is an anti-inflammatory agent one way or the other, rotenone was affected the nitric oxide concentration, and the administration of a colaviron affected this particular compound. Therefore, we can summarize and conclude that colaviron improved the longevity as well as a behavioral deficit and as well as oxidative stress and inflammation in this particular model. Finally, we show the effect of quercetin on the manganese-induced toxicity as well as a brain, pituitary testicular axis in rats. Administration of manganese affected the oxidative stress status of the rats by increasing hydrogen peroxide and lipid peroxidation, as well as it reduced glutathione S transferase, as well as the thiol compound glutathione in the rats. But quercetin administered alongside with the manganese, one way or the other, modulated oxidative stress and lipid peroxidation, as well as the antioxidant enzyme. We have the same effect on the inflammatory markers like nitric oxide and the myeloperoxidase. Manganese increase nitric oxide and myeloperoxidase, tumor necrosis alpha, and induce apoptosis by inducing a caspase, increasing caspase 3 activity. But the treatment and administration with quercetin was able to modulate apoptosis and also inflammatory markers. We have these histopathological functions in which manganese affected the histology, but quercetin at 10 and 20 milligram per kilogram body weight was able to actually restore the histomorphometry as well as histological sections that were affected by manganese treatment. Overall conclusion, we can say that Drosophila melanogaster as well as rats, diphenyl selenite and quercetin and colaviron may be a useful pharmacological agent in drug-induced neurotoxicity as well as neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's disease, and as such, they could be relevant and qualify as new therapeutic signature in human brain disorders. I leave you with these slides, and I thank you for your rapt attention. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a very interesting take on various chemopreventive agents drawn from the traditional and traditional phytochemicals. We're going to have questions at the end of the session.
Yes.
So I have Dr. Madhuri Gawande. May I request you to take this session further? Dr. Madhuri, are you there?
So we have Dr. Kalu Udensi.